I'm James Messer from ProfessorMesser.com, and in this video, I want to give you 5 reasons why your resume keeps getting rejected. As a hiring manager, I saw thousands of resumes come across my desk, and with all of these resumes, there were a number of problems that I kept seeing over and over again. Your resume is an introduction to a stranger, someone who does not know anything about you, so that first impression is very important. Most hiring managers and HR recruiters are looking for a resume that will best fit the job that is being offered. So they're going to spend a lot of time seeing if the resume really matches up with what they're looking for. This means they're going to see your resume come through, and this is your only opportunity to get their attention and show them that you are the right person for this job. This also means that you want to be sure that your resume does not get rejected the moment somebody happens to see it. So let's step through these 5 different rejections and make sure that these don't happen to your resume. Rejection number 1, your resume doesn't match the job requirements. Let's say you found a job posting and it sounds like a perfect job for you. It's the right kind of experience, the right kind of knowledge, and this would be a great job to apply for. But your resume doesn't quite fit exactly what they're looking for in the job description. Of course, you want to be sure that the skills and the experience that the employer is looking for matches the skills and experience that you have. But it doesn't have to be a 100% match. There's no one that is going to match everything that is listed in a job posting. So don't disqualify yourself. If you think you're a close fit, send in your resume. Have the employer decide whether you're the right fit for this job or not. Different job postings from different employers are going to have a completely different set of requirements. So why are you using the same resume for every single one of these job postings? Instead, you should be customizing your resume to fit what the employer is looking for. I realize it takes a lot of work and a lot of time to create a resume. So we're not talking about a complete rewrite. We're talking about customizing the resume in a way that fits with what the employer wants. I'll show you how to make these customizations in just a few minutes. So it makes sense to do this for every job posting that you apply to. We're going to pull out some keywords and make sure that those keywords are in your resume. If you want to take this to the next step, make sure that those keywords are also included in your LinkedIn profile. Here's an actual job posting, and let's pull out the keywords of this job posting and put them into our resume. This job posting says that the company is looking for a highly qualified network engineer to provide pre- and post-sales support. The ideal candidate will have a detailed understanding of network principles and fundamentals. They'll be experienced in building, troubleshooting, modifying switch configurations, IP address schemes, VLANs, subnetting. So we can start to see that there are some keywords that are popping up in this list. Make a note of what those keywords are. Some of them are very obvious. Some of them are very large groups of things that the employer may be looking for, and we want to highlight each one of those. One way to make this customization easier is at the top of your resume, have a summary of your skills and experience and maybe a set of bullets that shows very specific skill sets that you might have. And after that, you can put all of your professional experience in the resume. At the very top of my resume, I have security and technology professional with 15 years of industry experience across a broad range of networking and security technologies, proven ability to combine vision, ingenuity, and strong business acumen with well-developed technical and leadership skills. That is a very broad set of statements. There's nothing specific about any one of those. So let's take the specifics from the job posting and put them into the resume. We'll change the top part of this so that it says security and network professional with 15 years of industry experience, which includes Cisco, Ruckus, Palo Alto, Citrix, and VMware. That was pulled directly from the job posting. Proven ability to design and troubleshoot switch configurations, VLANs, and IP address subnets. Do you see how those keywords are now showing up in the very beginning of my resume? And then I can take the very specific skills the employer may be looking for, and if those match my skills, I can then add them to the bullets that are directly underneath that description of who I am and what my areas of expertise might be. That's the only change we would have to make. The rest of the resume stays the same. So it only takes a few minutes to make these modifications, and then you can send this customized resume off to the employer. Another good reason to go through this customization process is that before anyone happens to see this resume, there's probably a machine that is going to be looking through it first. This is the applicant tracking system, or the ATS. There are keywords for this particular job posting that the employer has already programmed into the ATS. When you send your resume in, the applicant tracking system is going to look through that resume for those keywords. That's why we want to make sure that all of those keywords are in your resume. The more keywords that show up on your resume, the higher ranking your resume will be, and the better chance you'll have that a human being will then examine your resume to see if you go to the next level. Of course, this is only going to get you through that first round until a human being actually looks at your paper. But if you don't do this, there's a very good chance your resume could be rejected before it's even seen by someone else. Rejection number 2, you included your name, but you did not include your address on your resume. Of course, our physical address is becoming less and less important as we're sending information electronically. We only need to know someone's email address. We aren't sending something to them through a postal service. However, there may be companies that are operating all over the world. You may be sending your resume to a company in New York, but they might have offices in hundreds of cities around the country. So unless they know where you live, they won't know if you will apply to a particular position or not. Also, keep in mind that when you submit the resume, the applicant tracking system is going to create a new record for you. It will put all of your skills and information from your resume, and then it will try to find your location. Sometimes you can find this by area code, but of course, these days, an area code doesn't necessarily have anything to do with where you happen to live. So make sure you put on your resume a mailing address. At a very minimum, make sure there is a city and a state listed. Another thing you might want to consider is not abbreviating your state. You'd be surprised at how many people aren't aware of the proper abbreviations of their states, and you don't want to make a mistake about where you happen to live. Instead, spell out the entire state, and the application tracking system will take it from there. Here's the top of my resume. I have my name, my phone number, my email address, and my LinkedIn profile. But it doesn't have my contact information for my physical address. I want to be sure to add that to the top of the resume so they know exactly where I happen to live. Rejection number 3, humans can't read your resume. If we make it through the applicant tracking system, a human being is going to look at our resume and determine if you would be a good candidate for this position. You'll sometimes hear this referred to as the 7-second rule or the 15-second rule or the 10-second rule. But the point with this is that the human being does not spend a lot of time looking at your resume to determine whether it goes on the accepted pile or the rejected pile. You want to be sure that your resume is able to make your case very, very quickly. This means your resume should have a single typeface. Don't use multiple typefaces on the same resume. You don't want to use any script typefaces or handwriting typefaces, and instead you should be using a sans serif typeface. Some examples of a sans serif is an Arial, Helvetica, Geneva, or Calibri. The serif typefaces have these little tails at the ends of the letters, for example, at the end of this S. Sans serif, or one that does not have the serif, you can see is easier to read because it doesn't have the tails on those letters. You also want to be sure that these typefaces are very easy to read on the page, so make sure that you're using about 12 points and that you have plenty of white space to be able to easily see what's listed on that resume. The applicant tracking system is also going to try to parse out the information on this page, so it would help if you made it as easy as possible for that robot to do its work. You want to try to keep the margins on the page to at least a ½ inch. If you find yourself running out of room and needing to make the margins smaller, then you probably have too much information on that page. You want to avoid putting borders around the page. It gets in the way of the margin and takes away from the white space. You also want to try to avoid any complex tables. The applicant tracking system likes when all of the text happens to be in a single line. And if you're putting multiple columns on the resume, that might cause problems with the applicant tracking system. And although it looks very good, it might take away from the readability of the resume itself. Let's look at some examples of resumes where all I did was change the typeface. Here's a typeface that is an all caps typeface Babus New, this is one that is somewhat difficult to read. Another example of one that's hard to read is one called Freehand. Although it looks interesting, it's difficult to really read exactly what happens to be there. Instead, use a sans serif typeface. Here's Arial. You can see that's much easier to read immediately. And another good sans serif font, very easy to read, is Calibri. The fourth rejection you might get is that you did not keep it professional on your resume. Remember that this is a job application. It's not a personal application about who you are as an individual, and instead it's about who you are as a professional. So there's some information that might be too much information. Things like your date of birth, your gender, or your marital status are not appropriate for a resume. You also don't want to put pictures on a resume or put any information that may be protected criteria. In the United States, that might be something like your race, ethnic origin, religion, age, marital status, disability, or other protected criteria. You also don't want to put any non-work or non-professional activities. If you do happen to have some professional activities, like working with a particular user group, then you can put that on your resume, but putting things like the basketball free throw grand champion would not be appropriate for your resume. And rejection number 5 is that you didn't proofread your resume. This one may seem obvious, but you would be surprised how many resumes came across my desk from professionals in the industry that had obvious spelling and grammatical problems. I've also heard other recruiters say that mixing of present and past tense when you're describing your job functions can also make it difficult to read. You might want to try making it present tense for the job that you currently own, and everything else would be past tense for your previous jobs. Once you have your entire resume ready to go, have someone else look through it. There may be words that aren't caught by a spell check that someone else reading through can find and correct for you. This is one of the most important documents that you're going to create in your professional career, and someone reading through it wants to know that you've spent the right amount of time and effort to make sure that it is perfect. Make sure that you do a full proofreading before ever submitting that resume. Hopefully, you'll be able to avoid those 5 pitfalls on your resume. Thanks for watching, and best of luck with your job hunt.